my Halloween costume, which I have a lot going on this month, so I'm hoping that I can get it done in a timely manner. I am leaving, I think, like the 27th or something of this month and won't be back till Halloween Day, so my costume has to be done before that. And what I'm leaving for is also a costume event, so I have to have my costume ready. And I was gonna originally make 2 costumes this year, but I think one I'm just gonna do randomly during the off holiday season, and then I'll wear it next year, I'll wear it whenever I want, because cosplay is also a thing. But with this costume, what I'm trying to make is the Bride of Chucky Tiffany's dress. I'm not going to do exactly what the doll Tiffany wore. I'm going to do more of my interpretation or style of it. I'm going to do a white dress, I'm going to do off the shoulder sleeves, and then I'm going to do a bodice with a skirt. And it's all going to be attached, so there's going to be a dress, but the tulle is going to be like a lot. Like not a ton that it poofs, but like enough that it gives it body when I'm wearing it. And I don't know exactly how to do any of it. I've never made any of this except for a bodice. I've made a bodice literally like a week before. And it didn't go exactly to plan, but it didn't turn out bad. So I have hopes for this bodice. And I'm just really worried. It's a Halloween costume, so I know from last Halloween I only wore it once. I'm not gonna stress it. I'm gonna go with the flow, and since I've never made it, I am gonna look up like how to do it in a sense, but at the same time, I'm not gonna follow instructions 100% because I suck at doing that, and also I like to follow my gut, and usually my gut turns out pretty decent, but sometimes I go down a really dark path. So let's see what happens with this Halloween costume. The fabrics I will be using for this piece are silk, a polycotton stretch, 1 glitter mesh that has small glitter, 1 glitter mesh that has larger glitter, and then soft tulle. All, of course, in white. So the first thing that we're going to do is make the lining for the bodice. I am viewing this almost as a trial just because I made a new pattern for this bodice. I made a corset / bodice before, and it was with different boot cups. It was a different length. I think the seam allowance was changed. So there was a lot going into making this pattern that I didn't know if it was 100% going to be correct. So the lining is almost like our prototype fabric. It's our trial fabric. And if it's not correct, we're going to have to go back and then adjust it, because I do have 4 yards of this fabric. This fabric is only being used because I have so much of it. I do not suggest using the kind of fabric I used for the lining just because of how stretchy it is and how not stretchy the silk is. You kind of want fabrics that are cohesive, especially when layering them. So it's very important to take that into account when buying fabrics. Now, I have 4 yards of this fabric because it's the first sample of my manufactured outfit. I'm really excited about it, but this was the wrong fabric and we had 4 yards left over after making 4 outfits. And I don't know what to do with it, so here we are. We're using it. We're just going to use it for lining and prototype fabrics and seeing if things will work. I do have muslin fabric, but I also have this fabric, so we have a lot of prototype fabric to play with, which is going to help me be more creative in the future. Now getting to what we're doing here, we're cutting the lining. Of course, we're chalking it out. With this fabric, I'm not as worried about the chalk color because of the fact that it's going to be inside. It's going to be facing my body and then facing the silk. So this is what the panels look like next to each other. And this is kind of what it's going to look like once we sew it. When it comes to pinning the panels together, we're going to put 3 needles, one at the top, one at the bottom, one in the middle on the close edge, and then a row of needles on the other side. That way we know where to sew, and it is secured in all sorts of ways. Now, when it comes to sewing, we actually did sew as close to the edge as possible, like we did a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but what we actually should have done was sew a 1/2 inch in to the fabric versus a 1/4 inch. We made a mistake. So this is what it looks like as we add panels on. The boob cup took a bit of maneuvering, but we got there, and it ends up looking like this. Okay, y'all, so this is the lining, and this is what the bodice is kind of looking like. I'm also kind of using this as like a prototype, so we might make another one. Just because I don't know if it's too wide, we might just take it in right here and connect the cups. Just because I feel like it is too wide. I don't know if it's just because it's stretch, and the silk has less stretch, which is why I did a larger seam allowance, but I don't know if I did it. I did the seam allowance correctly for this fabric, and I definitely didn't do a 1 inch when I was sewing it. So maybe I need to re-sew it. Maybe I need to correct myself, because this doesn't look too bad. But I think it's fine. But I'm just a little worried. I think we'll definitely have to see once I put the satin panels together. I'm just very worried that I may have sewn it at a probably 1/2 inch seam allowance versus 1 inch. I think actually maybe I did a 1/2 inch. I can't remember at this point. My brain is foggy because I am just so worried that this is too wide. I don't know. I'm gonna have to try to put it against my skin again and put it against my skin and just honestly see if it needs to go in anywhere. I honestly think that the cups do need to come closer in. So this may be adjusted. We might just do some adjusting here, because I feel like this is too loose and that the cups are going to look weird because of the way it's laying. I don't know. I just have a feeling, and now she's wobbling because I've spun her too many times. So, well, let's keep going, basically. So after changing a few things on the pattern and making a new lining, we finally get to cut the silk. When it comes to cutting silk, I do pin the fabric around the area just to make sure I get an accurate cut. Also did outline it with a fine line of white chalk. So if you notice the panel layout, you will notice that we changed quite a few things. After cutting the silk, we have to cut the mesh. And then once the pieces are cut out of the mesh, we have to pin that mesh to the silk, which is somewhat of a really tedious task, but honestly, it's going to be really worth it. Once it's all done, I'm going to be all shiny. Now that that's all done, we can finally get to sewing. And when we're sewing, we're just going to do a straight stitch, connecting the mesh to the lining. The only thing is I lowered my stitch length to be a little closer together because the mesh is something that can get pulled easily or not sewn to the fabric correctly. The other thing when sewing, every time you pivot, you want to backstitch just to secure that row of stitching you just did. When it comes to pinning the panels together, we're going to pin them the exact same way we pinned the lining together, with that same kind of row and the 3-edge ones just to secure that it's together. One thing when sewing 2 panels of fabric together, especially 2 dual layered panels of fabric together, you want to check your tension, just because if you don't, you could have a mess of thread bundle on top or under the fabric. So this is what it looks like when we start to add the panels. Once again, being super careful about the boob cup area because it's a more difficult area. Once finished sewing the bodice, it ends up looking like this. And then when it comes to attaching the lining, we're going to pin the outer edges and just sew a straight stitch again. But the only thing is we're going to do a secure straight stitch. And also, again, I have to change my tension because of the amount of fabric and because of the different styles of the fabric. The next step is to do a facing, which is kind of like a hem, except we're going to take a piece of fabric separate, curl it over the edges of my garment, and then sew a straight stitch down that. And then after you're done with that, you're going to want to cut the excess off just to have a finer finished look, and make sure that you don't cut the part that is sewn. The final step for the bodice part until attaching it is to put the grommets on. The first step with putting the grommets on is placing them. Once I know where I want to place them, I'm going to mark them. And then once they're marked, we go to the press. The first step is hole cutting the fabric. One little note is I tend to lower the press so it can mark the fabric, so that way I know I'm accurately putting the press where I want it. At the press, you're going to put the grommet piece that you want to face the outside on the bottom, and then put the good side of the fabric. And then you're going to put the grommet piece that you want to face inside, and then you're going to lower the press. You'll continuously do this until you have all of your grommets pressed. After pressing all the grommets, this is what it looks like. I chose gunmetal. Okay, y'all, so this is the bodice so far. This isn't laced up. Of course, it's not laced up properly, but this is kind of what it's going to look like. The sleeves are going to be sideways. The skirt's going to start going out here. And honestly, I'm thinking about taking this in and making it more like that shape, but like obviously inward, so that way it's not out external. Just because this is a little crooked. I'm not a fan of the shape. The boobs go way too into the armpits in my opinion. So I feel like taking this in and just sewing it in sideways would kind of make these proper. And then also get rid of this weird area right here. But other than that, I think it's pretty decent for being like one of my first actual bodices. There is no boning, so the only other thing is that I thought about adding boning in the back, but I do have a back issue that flares up sometimes, so I don't know if I want to do that. Also, it's Halloween. I'm not sure I want to go through a boning in the back area and the two very sensitive areas of my back, and then also have to go through haunted houses with that. So maybe we'll just take it in here a little and then secure the grommets and, sew the sleeves on, sew the skirt on. I'm excited now. I was a little worried, but now I'm excited. It's super pretty and sparkly. I don't know if it's a Tiffany thing, but it's a Shauna thing. So hey, let's get to the skirt though. To start the skirt, we have to cut 4 panels. We also have to cut a waistband. I do cut this waistband on a fold, just that way I don't have to do any extra sewing. We also cut an interface for the waistband, that way it'll just hold on. The waistband I'm not sure if I'm going to end up using since it's going to attach to a bodice, but we're doing it as a just in case. And then we do the same steps with the mesh. And then we pin them again. This is what 2 panels look like, and we're going to sew 2 panels together at a time on one side only, not on both sides, or else it'll be too small. When sewing these skirt panels together, I'm using my serger because it'll provide a durable stitch, and also with the blade down, I can cut any excess fabric off. That way, if the mesh panels or the other panels don't exactly fit together, they will at the end of the serge. Once serged, this is what it looks like, and we're going to repeat the steps with the other 2 panels that are serged together, and we're going to sew the skirt together. But before we sew the skirt together, we have to mark the zipper. That way we know where to stop serging on the one side. When marking the zipper, I'm just measuring the length and then marking it with chalk. And then we're going to serge the pieces together, stopping at the marking so that way I have room to sew my zipper in. Once done, this is what it looks like. This is the room for the zipper. And this is how I wanted to sew my skirt. When sewing the zipper, I just pinned it to both sides that are not sewn or serged together. And I'm just doing a straight reinforced stitch as we go down and then around, like under the zipper area. And then to secure it, I'm sewing a little on each side at the top areas, but not sewing all the way through. That way it's not interfering with the zipper. The last step of the skirt is to hem it. I'm using an automatic hem pedal foot, so I'm just slipping the fabric through and it's doing the turning or holding the hem for me. It's still a little tricky hemming a skirt. You want to make sure that you iron your hem, and you want to make sure that you're very careful to sew a straight hem on a curve is difficult enough, and my pedal foot did not want to work with me, so it made it even more difficult. After sewing the skirt shell, we move on to the tulle, which will fluff the skirt up and make it a poofy dress. So to make the tulle, I started by sewing the panels together. Some of these panels I cut on a fold, so there's only 2, and some of them I didn't have enough room to cut on a fold, so there's 4. So all of the panels are different. But when it comes to actually sewing the tulle, I am doing a closer stitch because of the wide gaps in between the mesh. I'm just doing a straight stitch. Sometimes I do a zigzag stitch depending on how large the mesh gaps are, but most of the time I just do a straight stitch because it's easy, it's simple, and I am lazy. But when it comes to sewing the layers of tulle together, I'm sewing 2 together at a time. And then we're adding the 2 layers together one at a time. The last layer of tulle I'm putting on top is the glitter mesh that we used on the skirt. And I'm doing this because I ran out of tulle, 1, but 2, it's excess, 3, it's pretty. And if tulle can be pretty, I'm excited about that. The last piece of the garment that we are going to make is the sleeves. I've never made sleeves before, so I'm a little worried, but I'm actually just gonna wing it. And I put some excess area on the pattern for slack, seam allowance, and any mistakes I make. This is what it looks like before we sew. And the first step of sewing is actually serging it and then hemming the edges. That way we have a clean cut on the sleeve and don't have to worry about doing it once it's attached to the dress. Once we're done hemming the edges, we're going to serge the 2 sides of the single sleeve together. I don't know the proper way of doing a sleeve, but this is the way I'm doing it. And then once we have our serged sleeves, we're going to take that edge, put it on the inside of the bodice, and sew the outside of the bodice facing upward, so that way we just have a clean finished look, and the sleeves are attached. To attach the bodice to the skirt, I did leave a lot of seam allowance or slack area on the skirt and on the bodice. I'm just going to attach those and then sew, and then hopefully the dress will be together. Okay, y'all, so this is the dress all finished. Obviously, I've attached everything and there's no turning back. So if there's anything I could change, I would probably smooth this out a little more. I would probably sculpt these a little better, maybe take them in a little further, maybe make them so that they drape a little better. And when it comes to the skirt, I would probably try to align that zipper as best I could. Put the tulle on the zipper line as well, because with all of them being cut differently, it didn't end up that way. And then honestly, just knowing how to attach a skirt and a bodice to make a dress would be beneficial. It's the one thing I didn't look up. I researched how to do a skirt pattern, and before doing my other bodice, I had researched how to do a bodice, and then I researched how to do sleeves, and I just kind of did the guess and check when it came to attaching, and I didn't attach my waistband to my skirt. Instead, I just made excess, and I think that was beneficial, but also not beneficial for the back part that is not covered with a band because of the corset. So I had to make like a facing or kind of like a waistband out of the old waistband fabric, but everything turned out really smoothly. I'm honestly really happy. I'm gonna give you a spin. The grommets are all laced up. I did use white ribbon. I don't know if the ribbon is the exact length I want to keep it, but right now it's good and spick and span the way it is. Let's spin! So this is the back, and obviously this is the front, and that's a curtsy for those that don't know. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that if you're here to learn something, that you learned something. I know I learned a ton. Honestly, there's a couple adjustments that I could even do for my bodice because I forgot to do it on an angle, did a straight line instead, so that was a whole problem, but we learned so much, and for this being the first dress I've ever made, I did pretty good. So I'm happy. If anything, I would make it poofier, but I didn't have enough tulle, and I didn't buy a thick enough tulle. So always do your research. Always make sure that you are using the fabrics that are appropriate for the project you're making, and always take your time. Those are 3 things that I kind of let be a little relaxed that I wish I did more time and effort into, but with my busy schedule, I could only dedicate so much time, but at the same time, we completed it. And I'm going to look so great for this costume thing, and I'm going to look amazing on Halloween. Okay, y'all, we are done with the dress. We are done with the Halloween project for the year. Any other costumes I do will be in a sense, cosplayer for other holidays. I am so happy. I'm not exactly 100% about the dress. There are so many things I would change. And honestly, I would do more research. Honestly, first and foremost, the pattern I would copy would not be the pattern I did. I did a pattern that was 4 panels. Instead, I should have done a pattern that was 3 panels because it made me sew my zipper on, not directly lined up with the bodice, which is not my preferred thing, but, it's a costume. I'm going to have a jacket on the whole time, basically, so it's not that big of a deal, and also, again, it's a costume. The fact that I made it is amazing. Second, the hemline on the skirt. I wish that I did a better job ironing it, and this is why ironing your fabric in every little step is so important, because if I did a better job ironing it, I feel like it would have went through the hem guide a little easier. I wouldn't have screwed up so much, and it wouldn't have this bulky look in this one specific area. And then when it comes to attaching things, I wish that I did look up how to make a dress instead of just making a skirt and copying my bodice pattern and then making a sleeve pattern. Just because I left excess fabric for attachment purposes, but I still didn't do it correctly, and I didn't attach the waistband around the front of the dress, which honestly, it's not a big deal, but I did have to go back and do some hand sewing because my slack area for attachment purposes didn't work out. But either way, I think it turned out amazing. The grommets, the only thing I can say about them is that they turned out exactly how they turned out last time. I'm thinking that maybe when it comes to grommets and these kind of slippery fabrics that you really do have to secure them. So I super glue them in, but it's not the best thing because it, kind of hardens the fabric around it. But either way, it works, and I'm happy with it. I think, if anything, it could be a little poofier, in the skirt area, But other than that, I probably wouldn't change much about it. I think I would change little things here and there for it to be an easier journey. But the design, I don't think I would change much. Maybe I would round out the breast area a little better up by the shoulders. But I think I like it all. It screams the decade of Chucky's to me. And that's what I wanted to do. That's why it was so sharp originally. And it wasn't that sharp in the drawing. I had adjusted that because I had watched the movies again. And I was like, I feel like it just needs to be sharper. I feel like she's a sharp personality. And that's just how it would be. So, I don't know. I followed the soul of it and where it took me. And I think that's the most important thing when doing something creative, is that you find that passion, that soul, that part of it. But I'm still really happy how quickly we finished it. It's still not quick enough to get another outfit out of the way for Halloween because I started it way later than I should have. But I'm so excited. It's done. If anything, I just have to do some eye hooks and sewing those on, hand sewing wise, just to secure the back. But we did it. I don't know how to sew a zipper still, but I did it. It's in there. It's not done properly, but it is done. Just like the dress. It is done. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have an amazing Halloween, and if you don't celebrate, it's kind of sad. It's like my favorite holiday, but I so totally support you, and you do you, and you do what you want to do. But make sure you get yourself a little treat or something, just because you deserve to be celebrated. And if you're not going to celebrate the holiday on the day, celebrate yourself. You know, I think that's important. Have an amazing day. Stay positive. Stay beautiful. Bye!